Coaches Show. I'm Bill Riley, Larry Krystkowiak with me here. We're at the Utah basketball offices on campus on a beautiful Monday evening. And, we're getting late in the year because the sun is still up to the west. We've got sunshine and sunlight here in the offices, at least for the first half of the show tonight. And we're going to get you ready for the final game of the regular season tonight as Utah hosts the Colorado Buffaloes coming up on Saturday afternoon, 12:30 at the John M. Huntsman Center right next door. Senior day for Utah's lone senior Mark Reiniger. And the final regular season game before the Utes a week from today head down to Las Vegas for the Pac-12 tournament. Coming up on the show tonight, we'll pass out our weekly awards. We'll look back on the Bay Area trip. We'll look ahead to Colorado and talk about the wackiness that is the Pac-12 conference this year, where up is down and down is up and a bunch of different things. So that'll all be coming up on the show tonight. And as always, we thank you guys for listening in on our flagship radio home, ESPN 700, and streaming us tonight. The University of Utah Athletics YouTube channel and our friends at Twitch have got us up as they have all season long. So whether you're watching tonight or just listening in tonight, thank you for making us part of your Monday evening. And a welcome into Coach. How are you, Larry?
Hi, Bill.
How are things?
Well, they could be better.
Sure.
But we're going to get back in the saddle and gave our guys 2 days off. It's been quite a gauntlet here the last month. An awful lot of travel and nights in the hotel. You know the deal.
Yep.
So it's, there's a little meat left on the bone here. We're going to try to figure a few things out, but it's right before our eyes.
You had 2 games in the Bay Area over the weekend, and you were in both of those games, and frankly, in both of those games down to pretty much the very end. The Stanford game down to about the last minute of the game, and obviously the Cal game went to overtime. Let's start with Stanford on Thursday night. Didn't start well for you. You guys didn't play great early. You kind of threw the ball all over, and then you came out in the second half and looked like a different team. You were determined. There was good energy out of the locker room, and I think you were executing better. What was the difference first half to second half in that Stanford game? Because they were 2 different teams to me.
Yeah, we just, Stanford's a good defensive team, and it didn't really look like us, like stuff that we had worked on, stuff that we talked about. We knew there were a couple different unique parts to Stanford's defense. They blew the side pick and roll. They keep you on the side of the floor, and there was 2 or 3 day period where we worked on what we were going to do offensively, and we decided to call audibles in the middle of it. And they double teamed us in the post. It just looked like we were out of sorts. We were very soft when it came to offense. The defense wasn't bad. We just couldn't defend the number of turnovers that we had. And we got a game plan to throw the ball inside, and we did that in the second half. We actually screened when play required you to screen. For some reason, the first half we just thought, guys were going to run into us, and we just, it's been kind of the same theme all season, and I'm a bit frustrated by it. We are not going to win any games this year if we don't do about 5 or 6 things. And we're going to address those things tomorrow in a practice setting and quit talking about it and go out and do it. It was kind of a bunch of mindless turnovers in the first game, and then the second game gave up 17 points off of second shots.
Yeah.
So it's one of the areas that we'd been pretty good at, and all of a sudden we wanted to go back to grade school basketball and watch, when the other team shot, we're just going to watch it and hope that it comes to us. And it was a number of times that they just out-physicaled us, and we didn't do enough, in 2 ball games against 2 teams that are playing good basketball. So it's a fine line between doing a few things, give those teams credit, and it's not the end of the world. And we don't have to try to figure out what the confusion is. We're either going to make a decision to guard the guy that's standing in front of us, or we're going to sprint back every time when the other team or when we shoot, so we don't give up easy ones. We're going to try to block out. And, those are 3 things right there that have been our Achilles heel all season. And so we're either going to buy in here in the next few days with a good week of practice and then head into Vegas and realize that, or or it's going to be a little bit more of the same.
You hope that those couple of days off maybe clear the guys' heads just a little bit and they come back with kind of a renewed purpose?
Yeah, well, I know I need it. I think our coaches need it, and we're heading in. We got a week before spring break. We'll have spring break when we go to Vegas, so that obviously there's always exams and papers due this week. We've been gone a lot, a lot of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday missing class, and then the previous week it was Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and so really focus on some academic stuff and make sure guys are able to finish up into the break strong, and then we'll see what we can do basketball-wise.
I know this is a glass half full look and there's no moral victories, but that second half of the Stanford game, your kids showed some fight, and they've shown fight in a lot of games where maybe they dug themselves a hole. And I think you'd probably like to see that kind of a fight and that kind of an effort in the first half so they don't dig that hole to begin with. But you guys had it down to one possession at Stanford. And you had about as good a look with a guy who can shoot the basketball for you from the corner. Jackson Brenchley had a look that could have tied it, I think, at 63.
Yeah, no, that was it. It was one of our best looks of the game.
It was.
It was a nice pass. We got it in transition, and they were scrambling back and made the right play. So, we've watched overtime and that type of game. We watched clips, and it gets back to there really are no little things. You have to. You gotta you gotta be able to make open shots consistently. We've gone from first in the Pac-12 to sixth in free throw shooting. And there's just a lot of things that the box is not being checked, and so we're not earning a victory. But there are no, there's no little things, and it's a frustrating time for us. We're going to get on the guys and try to solidify a few things and find some confidence and see who we play in Vegas and shake it up against Colorado, which was a really embarrassing game. The last time we played them, got absolutely manhandled. So we'll see what we're made of going down the stretch here.
The Cal game, you got to overtime, and again, glass half full. He hasn't had a great conference season for it. He was hurt a little bit too, but Booth Gotch really showed up, and he showed up at a time where you needed him. One, because Rylan Jones got knocked silly and was knocked out of the ball game about 4 minutes in against Cal, and you don't have a lot of guys that can really ball handle and institute or instigate offense.
Yeah.
But I thought Booth played well for you, and he hasn't shot the ball great over the last month, but he didn't settle for shots. He made a couple of threes, but he didn't settle for jump shots. And you guys aren't in that game and have a chance to get it to overtime. Obviously, he hit the free throws, but if Booth doesn't show up with 19 and play pretty hard for you, you're not even there.
No, that's very true. And we're looking for as many things that are positive. That was one of the positives, and just need to get more of a concerted effort on the defensive end. I didn't think it was, bad offensively. Booth had those points. Timmy made points. Franz was good. Not a whole lot from our interior. We got out-rebounded. But, it's still a handful of free throws. Just takes a couple more plays. And let's try to get it all cruising here at the right time. That's what we're going to need is the players need to step up right now, and we're going to need to get some great performances and tie together 3, 4, 5 guys at a time. And as we know, this conference is wide open.
Yep.
And a lot of crazy things can happen. So I'm going to choose to believe and get after it for the next 10 days, and hopefully our troop does the same thing.
Well, the other thing, too, is you've got a by year young team. I'm not going to call them a young team per se, but the core of this basketball team is together. So, these guys are going to be back again next year, and if you can end the season feeling pretty good, maybe you didn't get where you wanted to get, and maybe the record isn't quite where you wanted it to be, but if you can end feeling like you played pretty good basketball and heading into the offseason, this is a group that's coming back. You don't have a bunch of juniors and seniors who are graduating who have licked the stamp and mailed this thing in. These guys are going to be back. So a good finish, whether it's 2 or 3 wins or just playing well in 2 or 3 games, I think that could help you.
Yeah, and we're kind of at the crossroads with I'm going to explain this to our team tomorrow. What do we want our season to be known as?
Right.
What do we want to remember? And we've talked about this process. I personally don't want to talk about beating Kentucky and beating BYU. I don't want that to be the memory of the season. And we have an opportunity in front of us. If we make a decision that we're going to grind, we've got to be a lot more physical. Both teams on this past weekend, it's disheartening that we get beat to the floor. I mean, they got multiple guys on the floor on multiple plays, and we're just figuring out that the ball's on the floor kind of deal. So we got to go earn it. But, I love our guys, and here it is right in front of us. And I think there's more to be done. And to your point, it's a one game at a time mentality. But if we can start feeling better about how we're playing and the attention to detail and get a good little taste in our mouth, this is all about experience. So we need as much experience as we can possibly gain throughout the equation until somebody tells us we're not playing, and there's some games that we can win.
Let's take our first time out of the Coaches Show tonight. We'll come back. We'll pass out our weekly awards and talk about some of those guys that have played well as of late for this Utah basketball team, and talk about how you get to playing that right kind of basketball, and what are, he says there's no little things, but there are, a bunch of little things that add up to be big things, and what are some of those things, those boxes that need to be checked Saturday and into Vegas next week. We'll do that as we work ahead here on the Coaches Show tonight. Just a reminder, Budweiser and Bud Light are proud sponsors of Utah basketball. Enjoy one as you settle in to watch the Utes, and drink responsibly with Anheuser-Busch. Back on the other side of the Coaches Show here from Learfield IMG College. Brought to you by Smith's, low prices and market fresh. We're live today from the Utah basketball offices. It's our last regular season show. We've got the final game of the regular season coming up on Saturday at the Huntsman Center with the Buffs in. That game's at 12:30 on Saturday. Our pregame coverage will begin at 11:30. And then next week it's off to the Pac-12 tournament, which we'll talk about coming up. We'll do a wrap-up show at some point in time later in March or early April to kind of wrap up the basketball season as is. But next week they'll be next Monday you guys head down to Vegas. So
yeah, Monday night.
We can't do the coaches show next week. All right, our Team Utah Player of the Week. Nobody had a great week. A couple of guys had good individual games. I'll go with Timmy Allen. He had 26 the other night. It looks like he's beginning to find his offensive game a little bit more. He went through some stretches early in the Pac-12 season where he was getting some points, but he was having to take 20 and 25 and 18 shots to get there. Last couple of games, he's been a lot more efficient with the ball.
I would agree.
He had 26 the other day against Cal.
Yep, and had a couple nice, into the paint, nice
and
perimeter
ones.
passes. Hit Booth for 2 threes. No, one of the threes for Booth's first three that he's hitting quite a spell. So he drew his man, and we still everybody to a man needs to start playing defense.
Yeah,
because point of attack. And we've got guys that have been around here a little bit now that shouldn't be getting beat the way we're getting beat. And it was a lot of penetration Saturday against Cal, and a big part of defending is rebounding. And it was, offensively, I think TA's making progress and is finding his a little bit of mojo and understanding the playmaking, but he's right at the top of the list with needing a better effort defensively. He and the rest of our guys, we got to get in here and start guarding.
Which is interesting because you probably played your best defensive game of the year the first time you played Cal. You limited Cal to 45 points that game, and I think they shot about 33% from the floor that day too. So it was markedly, and it's kind of how your season's been, home versus away. But, yeah, you had some good defensive games at home, and then on the road not quite as much, and Cal was a good example of that.
Yeah, and I think I watched the Cal game at home, and they missed a bunch of open shots.
Yeah.
And then Saturday they hit a bunch of guarded shots. That's the difference between playing at home and on the road.
Right.
They had guys that stepped up at the end of regulation into overtime, and it's just a fine line for us to lose sight of a guy and, end out of bounds plays. We let them score a few buckets on free throws. So that's, we've got to be more consistent with it. But as you said, it's a lot of the different elements, the energy you get at home, and hopefully we get a nice little crowd Saturday with Colorado and find that energy, and then we're all going to be in a neutral site in Vegas, so we can quit talking about road and home and all that stuff, and it's going to be kind of a new environment for a lot of players there.
Well, the good news is you've won in Vegas already this year. You beat Kentucky, a game you don't want to dwell on, I know, but
yeah,
you do have a win in that building in Vegas. So Timmy Allen's going to be our Team Utah Player of the Week, brought to you by University of Utah Healthcare, where they've got a game plan for your family's health. Visit them online, uofuhealth.org. Subway Sub, should we go with Fonz?
Yeah.
He's been kind of he came off the bench and was so good. He was such a lift for you guys the other day. He was okay at Stanford, but he had 20 for you the other day, and at a time where you needed to make some big shots, he brought both energy and shot making for you against Cal.
Well, this weekend he wasn't a secret. He was one of those guys that Stanford had guys draped all over him to start with, and that was one of my examples with screening. Fonz didn't do a very good job of setting himself up to be screened. He kind of stands there and lets his defender know that, they're coming to screen for me, and then he kind of gets out physical because he's not a big kid, you know. So we've got to improve that, making sure that he's got a little more of a setup in him and gets his guy moving a certain direction, a little cat and mouse stuff to come off some of our screens. And right now he's shooting the ball as well as anybody, not just in the conference, but production-wise he's doing things nationally when he gets touches. But he's got to figure out a way. One, he's got to screen on certain plays because screening is one of the best ways to get open for yourself.
Right.
And sometimes he kind of forgets the first part of an action, and then he'll want the cleanup, but the cleanup's not there because he didn't make the first guy guard the action, and then he's got to do a better job of setting up. And he, like everybody else, we got to start guarding some people. We can't be in the bottom two teams in defensive categories at this point. We're going to have a little metamorphosis and get into some guys and play much more physically and much more aggressive on defense.
Have you had that before in your coaching career, college or pro, where teams, you went an entire year where you struggled defensively, and then you had to work on it in that off season, and maybe they got better in that next year. Did you have it maybe in the early days here or someplace else, Montana or someplace like that?
What's interesting, Bill, is we kind of worked through this process this season with guarding actions, guard and pick and roll, and we're getting better at that. And then what happens at the end of a clock is, and teams are just looking at us now, and they don't even bother to come and set a pick and roll. They just want to beat the guy that's standing in front of them.
Right.
And so it's just, and you can go right down the list of a lot of our guys that just can't keep the ball in front of them. And it doesn't matter defensively, but some of the growth that we've had and being connected and all those types of things at the point of attack where teams downhill and get into your paint, you foul them, you engage offensive rebounders because your bigs have to help. It's instant death. And so for us, I do think we've made some progress, but here it's Jerry Sloan.
Well, GYFG.
Guard your guy.
Yeah, and it's basketball at its most basic, really.
Yep.
I mean, you could talk about fighting through screens and everything else, but ultimately basketball at its most basic level is you versus it's ball you man.
Yes.
Ball you and keeping that guy, being able to keep that guy either in front of you or out of the lane, right?
And we don't have a person right now that I would say is a stopper. That's new. Where you usually have a couple guys on your roster that you're going to put them out there and they're going to guard.
Do you feel like you've got guys that could be?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't want to be right now. At least they haven't shown. The film doesn't lie.
Right.
Because we get, whether it's Brandon or Riley or Mickey or Rylan or Jackson or Fonz or Timmy or Booth, everybody's just got a big sign on their forehead that says, please try to take me to the basket because I'm not really capable of moving my feet or making the play. And whether you believe it or not, that's the reality, and I guarantee you that's what's on other team scouting reports. And until we step up and try to take a charge and make up our mind, because I've always said whether you think you can or you think you can't, either way you're right. And I think when we're standing up in front of a lot of these cats right now on defense, we don't think we can. That's at least the way the film looks. And so until you change your mindset and put on a superhero mask and try to be something that you haven't been this season, a stopper, then we'll do our postseason coaches show and we'll give all these poor grades and then we'll have to get back in the saddle. I'm confident that we can do it if we'll make up our mind to do it, and the next week's going to be big.
It's been interesting to watch because at different times during the year you had guys that have shown an ability or a propensity to guard. Timmy Allen at times this year has been a good defender for you. Mickey Yantunen at times this year has been a pretty good defender. Mm-hmm. Mickey and Rylan and some of these guys take charges at times this year.
Yep.
They're just not doing it consistently.
It can't be a sometime deal.
No, it's got to be an all-the-time deal.
It can't be a sometime deal. It's a two-way sport, and it can't be when our shots are going in and we feel really good about ourselves that we're going to give you a little something extra. And we were leaking out in rebounds against Cal. The ball hadn't been secured yet, and we're getting shot out of the cannon. I won't mention any of our guys' names on offense, like the court is a hill, but you can't get them to run that fast when it's time to get back on defense. There's something wrong.
Yeah.
And it's a mindset thing. I'm convinced it's not an athletic. Some of it's weight room, some of that, but it's a mindset thing, and we better. Well, we're going to make up our mind to do it. We'll do it.
By the way, our sub of the game, as we bring it back around again, will be Alfonso Plummer. Brought to you by Subway Restaurants, where you can get chips, cookies, and a 20-ounce drink for free when you order the footlong of the day. I want to go back to something you were talking about with Fonz. You said he doesn't always set himself up to be in a position to shoot the ball. Good shooters, guys that are shooters. And that's what Fonz is. He's a shooter. Figure out ways to set up their defender, whether it's running them off a screen, whether it's jabbing them one way, coming back the other way. Who's the best guy you've had at Utah that was good at doing that? Was it Parker? Was it Ced? Was it Brandon? Was it Jordan? You've had good shooters here. Who was the best guy at really using and setting his defender up to get his shot?
I think it was Brandon Taylor.
Was it Brandon?
Yeah.
Because he was quick and smart.
But he would sell the first move.
Yeah.
and he was low to the ground, and he worked really hard in all facets. It's an example of having to play hard. You got to go earn a shot, and I thought Brandon was really good. We ran a bunch of specials for him that looked like certain things where he'd get his defense going one way and come back and had the second move part of it, and that's a skill.
It's an art.
It's an art. It's Ray Allen and Reggie
Was he
Miller.
good at that immediately, Larry, or did he grow into that?
I think he grew into it. Yeah, I think he grew into it. And anytime you're playing with somebody to the level of DeLon was really good at working with him and was able to deliver the ball on time and on target when Brandon was working. But that's an example of playing without the ball in your hands.
Yeah.
You got to be a guy when your defender stays locked in and thinks they know where you are. And Fonz had a great cut at Cal, a backdoor cut that he got a layup on.
Yep.
Because his defender thinks, all my guy does is stand out here and shoot threes. Well, when we turned and looked, Fonz wasn't there anymore. He cut, and I think Mickey hit him for a backdoor layup.
Yep.
So
it was a little bounce pass for the layup.
That's an example of not watching the action, but you've got to go earn yourself some shots, and it takes some effort, and it takes a mental concept to see what's going on defensively. That's one of the things that our team needs to improve on, is making reads based on what the defense is doing, not making reads based on what we kind of premeditated we were going to do ahead of time. And that's improving a little bit, but still a ways to go.
Let's take a time out on the Coaches Show. We'll come back. They've got a week this week to get ready for Colorado, and as you've heard Larry say, there's a lot to work on over this week and obviously into next week. Next week they won't have as much time because it's a Wednesday game, and they'll find out Saturday night likely who they play on Wednesday, Sunday morning. So how much prep work goes in and what's the priorities this week as they get ready for Colorado. We'll talk about that next on the Coaches Show from Learfield IMG College. Utah fans, it's time to grab an ice-cold Mountain Dew and enjoy Utah basketball. Do it this Saturday. Mountain Dew and Code Red. Pepsi, proud sponsors of Utah basketball. Utah has Colorado Saturday, 12:30. For Senior Day, one senior, Mark Reiniger, will be honored. We'll talk about Mark here in a minute. You were talking about, kind of a checklist of things, the boxes you've got to check for you guys. You don't have a wide margin for error. You guys have to hit a lot of these boxes to be successful. So you've got to, you're giving them today off. They'll have some time. You'll get ready for the game Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Let's prioritize. What's at the top of that checklist for you? The first couple of things that are on that checklist for you as you get ready for Colorado this week, things you've got to clean up.
Well, I think defensive transition is one of the big ones, and then defensive rebounding. Real concerted effort to secure the ball before we take off. I mean, I've always said the things that are happening the most frequent, are the things that you have to make sure you're dialed in on, and we're going to have to take a little trip and reconvene, kind of circle the wagons where we were a few months ago when it came to this defensive transition, this sprint facet of the minute the ball is shot for three of our guys, no matter where they are. The minute the ball's in the air, they are sprinting back because they got to get back and guard the ball, not jogging back. And then our bigs, after they make an effort to get an offensive rebound, need to get back. And it's been an absolute crapshoot with the intensity that we've had coming back. Now, Ryland's really good at that. Ryland's good at stopping the ball, and it helps our defense. So when Ryland's not out there, our defensive transition looks like it's back in high school again.
Right.
And we put too much heat on ourselves. So it's Tony Dungy style. It's like just doing the ordinary things extraordinarily well. Let's make a recommitment to doing some things defensively. When it comes to offense, it's going to be real simple. We're getting to the point where we've got about 6 or 8 plays. We're going to run these plays, and you guys don't turn the ball over, and let's get some shots, because if you can keep a team out of transition and you don't let them kill you on the offensive glass and you don't turn it over at a high rate, you'll be in a lot of games. And then we got to get a little lucky with some bounces and some different things going our way, but you got to earn those things. So that's kind of where our focus, probably back to some of that initial shell drill, some of the basic stuff that we dreamed up. It'd be good to come full circle and go back to some of those fundamentals, passing, catching, getting leads, getting open. I think those are all important.
Yeah, the turnover thing is interesting because you had 3 turnovers in the first 3 minutes against Cal. And then you only had 1 the rest of the half, so you're figuring, okay, we're doing a better job. And then you came out in the second half, and the turnovers were there again. And I know you guys break down play by play, frame by frame. Dave does such a good job with your numbers back there. But, I mean, is there any sort of common denominator you found on the turnover side of things and something that you could work on specifically with them? Because they're a bugaboo.
Yeah, I mean, the Stanford game was horrendous, the way we started. And it sounds really elementary and maybe stupid for me to even be saying it, but don't throw the other team the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like half of them.
Right.
And created by pressure. So we get sped up a little bit. There's a guy in you. They're making it uncomfortable. You've got to own the space in front of you and be really strong with the basketball. We got to get back to some of those drills, 70-point drill where you can't dribble. And you got to be strong. You got to meet passes. You got to make passes, because we had a half a dozen turnovers on the weekend that you just go, what? Why would you throw this ball?
Correct.
The defense is standing there, and so the fundamental thing. But I think where it kicks in, teams speed us up, and then we get playing too fast, and we've got to get back to some of those fundamentally sound footworks, 2-foot jump stops, ripping through. We call them Villanovas, where you stay on the floor. Much easier to take a 5-second call, which are really rare nowadays.
Yeah.
Closely guarded call, whatever, 3 seconds, but at least you get a chance to defend. The ones we make, like pick sixes, they're heading the other way, and we can't get back and defend them. So it compounds one problem into the second problem. So we can't have the live ball turnovers. Those have been killers.
Yeah, absolutely. They have been. You mentioned Ryland and transition defense a minute ago. Obviously, he took a big shot and got knocked out of the game on Saturday evening. Anything you can tell us at this point in time about where he is, or still too early in the week to know?
Yeah, he's not in a good place. Anytime you talk about concussion stuff and sensitive to the light and the noise, and it was there was a couple of things that took place on the play. All could have been solved if we just disciplined with some blockouts. But then one play leads to the second play, leads to the third play, and Ryland's in the middle of all of it with three.
Yeah, you told me three. He took 3 shots on that same play.
Yeah, it took, who's the leading scorer on their team?
Matt Bradley.
So Matt Bradley gets an offensive rebound, and Ryland's trying to wall him up, and he kind of takes an elbow as he shoots. And he's falling down as Brandon Carlson's coming to block the shot, and he catches him with his knee in his head as Ryland's falling, and then to sum it all up, just the kind of the icing on the cake, everybody lands on him. Multiple guys land on him, so it's just the kid can't catch a break. He's been in some ribs, ankles, head. He puts himself in harm's way, and he's paid the price with this, and we'll just pray that he gets some recovery. But they're not, they're never the same.
Right.
Can't analyze them the same or
It's something
diagnose them the
different every
same.
time,
And
yeah.
his health is the most important thing. So when you're messing with that, you're talking about the brain. It's nothing to be taken lightly.
So fingers crossed on Ryland Jones, just
Yeah.
that he gets that thing all cleared up this week. Basketball or not against Colorado, just get into a good place and maybe back as soon as next week in the Pac-12 tournament. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. Colorado's on deck this weekend. Tad Boyle's team, they looked like the best team in the conference for most of the conference season, but they've taken a couple of steps back the last couple of weeks. Still a very good team, a veteran team. McKinley, Wright, and crew will be here Saturday. We'll talk about the Buffs next here on the Coaches Show from Learfield IMG College. season show. We'll do a season wrap-up in a few weeks. Utah's got Colorado on Saturday. Tad Boyle's Buffs got the Utes over in Boulder in January, and they've been very good. They've won 20-plus games. They were riding high, and they had a little bit of a skid. It's the first time in a long time I could remember the Bay Area schools sweeping the mountain schools at home. In recent years, both Utah and Colorado have had good success going into Stanford and Colorado and Stanford and Cal and getting wins, but you guys and Colorado got swept on the weekend, and Colorado got beat the week before as well. So they've hit a little bit of, I don't know how much you've watched of them over the last couple of weeks, but obviously it's a talented and veteran team. Any idea why they're struggling right now?
Well, it's no different than a lot of teams. They ran into UCLA, who's
the hottest team
who
in the league.
steamrolled them, kind of came back at their place. And they went into Cal, and Cal drubbed them. And Stanford got their number too. I mean, there's some good teams.
Yeah.
Cal, it's the things we talked about where they don't turn it over, they defend their butt off, they rebound, they get back on defense, and they stay in games. And Matt Bradley's playing great for them. And Stanford's defense has been phenomenal. They lead the Pac-12 in a lot of categories and have a high-energy group with a lot of scoring punch. So, Colorado's lost 3 in a row, but, 3 really good teams and kind of the same storyline that we're in the midst of. There's no easy games in the league. They're talking about maybe 7 teams being in the Pac-12 tournament, which is what I heard yesterday, which would be awesome. And it's unfortunate that we're not in the thick of that. But I also know some crazy things can happen in Vegas, and I'm going to keep believing that we can do some fun stuff going down the stretch. And we've got to obviously focus on Colorado, and I think we'll be ready by the time that comes. But excited to finish it off.
Yeah, Colorado got you at their place the first time around, and 2 things that jump out at me from that game. Evan Batty, their big man, played big boy basketball with you on the inside, got a lot of offensive rebounds, used his physicality, and they made a lot of shots. I mean, they made a lot of 3-point shots, whether it was McKinley Wright or Gatling or Schwartz. They made shots that day, and the shots they didn't make, Batty was kind of controlling the inside. What stood out about that first game against Colorado?
You hit it right on the head.
Okay.
It was a real physical game. We missed a bunch of point-blank shots, which has become a problem around the rim, getting the ball around the rim, and it was a physical contest. It was Batty and Bay and some other boys were throwing their weight around, but they came off a tough loss and had some similar things going where they're up against the backs are up against the wall, and it was a 40-minute whipping, start to finish, and we didn't have an answer, but it was definitely a physical mindset type of thing, and playing at their place in elevation where they got out in transition, and they executed, and it definitely the better team. So we'll queue up some of those replays and make sure that we remind our guys, and it fits really well. It parallels what we're talking about with our mindset this time of year anyway, so I think it'll be very fitting.
Senior Day, you'll have one senior to honor. That's Mark Reiniger, who's not played a lot for you in his career, but he's kind of given his heart and body for your career, for your team. He's been a part of your practice team for the last several years. Yeah,
he's a great kid, and Mark was making some real progress and was one of the bigs that we have that has a level of physicality to him, and since I've been here suffered the worst ankle sprain in terms of longevity of how long it took him to get back, and then he actually got back in the fray about the time we played Colorado the last time, and needed some of that physicality, and then it was shortly thereafter that he took a serious knock in practice, and concussion protocol and all that, so he hasn't been able to enjoy much of a senior year, but he's a terrific kid and a student, and he's gonna do something that we'll all be really proud of at some point, with his education, and he's dialed in and he gets it. He's ready for life. So it's been it's been a lot of fun having Mark, and we'll have his family and brother, sister, and parents, and everybody here Saturday, and those days are always hard.
Yeah, Mark's a Colorado native, too, so he'll wrap up his career, at least at home, the regular season part of his career, on Senior Day against the team from his own state. We'll take a final time out here on the Coaches Show. We'll come back and look at the craziness that is the Pac-12 Conference. It changes day to day. It's kind of like weather in Utah. It changes on a regular basis, so don't hold your breath. We'll come back and wrap it up next. This is Utah Basketball from Learfield, IMG College. All right, final segment on our final regular season coaches show. The Pac-12 tournament's next week. I don't know what to make of this league this year. It's crazy. Given week, different people step up and do different things. You guys are really good at home. You've struggled on the road. There's teams that have won. I mean, UCLA, they look dead in the water after non-conference play, and the light switch has come on with their first-year head coach. They're the best and hottest team in the league right now. And they weren't even in Lenardi's field a week ago. Now they're in the field, but they weren't even in the field a week ago. You got teams that you thought, Colorado's hit some hard times. Arizona State was up there for a minute. This league it's a better league top to bottom this year, but it's hard to figure.
Yeah, it is, and it also gives you, it gives you hope because there is, chinks in enough of the team's armor, and you got to catch people on a certain night, and we've got to realign our own stars here a little bit and make some breaks. But you can see a scenario where you can, you go down that list of all the teams that we've played, and certainly we'll be playing in Vegas, and with the exception of Colorado, there's reason to feel like, you can beat anybody on any given night. So you'll have a number of those teams that are locked in going into the tournament. So you've got that human element of, do you want to grind out 3 games in the Pac-12 tournament or maybe 4 in order to be really tired when it comes time for the NCAA tournament. So the brain's a funny thing, and we've just got to get back to what we spoke about a week ago, is let's try to control the controllables, the stuff that I know we need to improve on and be sharp with moving forward. And I know we've got a group of guys that are going to be willing to buy into it. And then let's go let it fly.
Well, have a good week of practice.
Thanks,
and then
Bill.
We'll see you Saturday.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Head coach Larry Krystkowiak with us here. 12:30 for the tip time on Saturday against Colorado, and 11:30 pregame. Then next week we're off to Vegas. We'll talk to you in a few weeks. This is Utah basketball from Learfield, IMG College.